Welcome to Tech Inspection, the show where we check out in-depth subjects from around drag racing. And this week, we are talking about centrifugal blowers in drag racing with Eric Dillard and Jason Lee. I'm Brian Petty, joined by Brian Wagner, editor of Dragazine. Brian, what's going on, man?
What's going on, Petty? Ready to talk some big blower fun, quite literally.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. I am ready, and I'm really glad that we got Dillard and Lee on the show. That's going to be really cool to talk to those guys. So let's just kick it off with the fun segment. I sent that over to you, Wagner. Take a look at that one. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, your typical engine dyno scene, checking the timing, talking to the dude running the board, like, hey, we good to go? Let's do this.
And it looks like a small block Chevy.
Yeah, looks like it. Just very, very typical dyno run.
Yep. And
it looks like things are not going according to plan as they bring. Rattle, and
yeah. I thought it was a little fun, but more a good chance for some education because, I'll see guys on the dyno, whether it's a chassis dyno, usually not an engine dyno, but usually chassis dynos. But regardless, this is like a safety thing, right? You see guys sitting on the fender, sitting in the trunks, and it's like, if that tire blows up or if something happens, a strap comes loose, that's a big deal. And on this one, the dyno itself actually has a malfunction because you can see the engine fire and then the engine actually shoots forward off of the hub of the chassis dyno, of the engine dyno. So that was kind of interesting. I just wanted to bring it up to guys hey, maybe don't sit on trunks, maybe don't sit on fenders. If you got a spinning problem, that's your problem, but don't put other people in danger. Anyway, I thought that was a good fun/educational moment here on Tech Inspection.
The more you know.
The more across the top. So Wagner, I got to ask you, what is going on with that member T-shirt? Member, huh?
NHRA membership, man. Finally got my shirt in the mail.
Okay, you picked it. Okay, now that you picked it up, I can see. So you just got it in the mail.
Yeah, just finally got it. With the project car, I'm going to have to get my license this year since I'm actually going to be going fast enough. So figured sign up, get the whole membership, support the organization, and, do what's right. Because to go as quick and as fast as what we're probably going to go in this car, I'm going to need it. Plus, if I get my license in my friend's Super Comp dragster, I'm really going to need it then because I don't think they're just going to let me hot lap that thing without any, licensure or training. They might frown upon that a little bit.
Yeah, safety's kind of just slightly important. We emphasize it every 5 minutes on this show, I feel like, but it's because it's so dang important. But that's a good shirt. They never sent me one. They just sent me my new license in the mail. They're like, here you go. And it's all right, I'd like a member T-shirt. That was funny.
Got to sign up for the gold package or something.
Right, yeah.
I get to stand underneath the tent at the events. I get the opportunity to spend money quicker. I got a $25 gift card to sign up, which might pay half the tax on the next thing I gotta buy. It's all the perks of being a member.
Right? Oh, absolutely. I agree. So, okay, cool. So it looks like do we have Dillard or Lee on first?
Believe we will have Jason Lee on first
to
talk about the blower situation we got. Kind of looking at the blower tech and what it comes to these 3,000 horsepower plus blowers that are a lot different than your typical bolt-on blower you'll see on a Mustang. What makes the difference between them and their little brothers, and what goes into tuning engines that use these things, and what package works the best, because they're a little bit of a different animal. It's definitely something we'll be able to talk with Eric from Proline about, because they've kind of really exploded with this package they've put out with the Procharger and the blowers, and the centrifugal blowers. It's been a big deal.
Yeah, nope, I could not agree more. So, okay, it looks like Jason Lee is on. Jason, what's up, dude? What's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just trying to get ready for PDRA, and hopefully we can, have a better outcome than we did last week.
I see you working on a bunch of different cars. We met years ago. I think we were at Pomona, actually, when they were still letting us on with NMCA West, and I met you there when you first started working with Gustafson. So definitely cool to have you on the show, and maybe we can catch up later. But obviously we're talking about centrifugal superchargers on this show, and we have some questions kind of laid out for you. So I'll just start off and ask you my first question, and I just want to get your opinion on what you've seen change over the last few years with centrifugal superchargers, because I know you work on quite a few cars that are, set up with that kind of a power adder.
Basically, I mean, the unit itself, the foundation of the Procharger really hasn't changed much. There's been some wheel designs and stuff like that to try to make them more efficient. And that's kind of been, the biggest change that I've seen over the last 2 years or so. Specific head units are still untouched. They're still 10, 15 years old and still perform excellent. And then in some of these other, ultra competitive classes, they really focus like on the X275, the Ultra Street, and then the Pro Mod blowers to try to make them as absolutely efficient and, I guess, best performing as possible.
Jason, looking at that, you see, centrifugal blowers have been around for a while, and they're the go-to forced induction bolt-on for street cars. You still see a lot of that. What is like the big difference between these blowers we're seeing in Pro Mod Radio versus the Top Sportsman versus like a street blower I could put on my 2000 F body? Is there a really big difference beside the size? What makes these things so gnarly?
To be honest, a lot of them are very, very similar to each other. It's just like each blower has a bigger brother. You got a bigger brother, a bigger brother, a bigger brother, and they're made very, very similar. Just all the parts get bigger, all the pieces get bigger. As you get into the bigger blowers, like in Pro Mod, for example, it's very easy just to keep making bigger and bigger wheels and bigger volutes and bigger blowers. But the problem is you still have a transmission. You still have to spin it, and there's a lot of weight when you go to a bigger impeller. So now if you spun that blower, 4 years ago as a 136, say 75,000 RPM, well, the 140, you may only be able to spin 71,000 RPM because the impeller's heavier, and you're still running off of the same bearing package that supports all of that. So that's kind of what they, I guess, experimented with the 140 is basically trying to see how big they could go and still stay together, and maximize the most amount of power to compete with twins and compete with roots and screw blowers. And then, they've done a very good job.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm going to kind of dovetail that into my next question. I remember years ago, there was this rumored F4, right? There was like 155 millimeter, and it made this big dyno number forever ago. And then we just never even saw it into production.
Yeah, I don't know much about the specifics, and I don't know how much they'd even want me to talk about. But what I can say is that would be an example of going too big, and I guess losing track of the fact that there still is a transmission, and that's going to become your weak point. So as far as being a very functional, reliable race blower, that's probably, never going to hit the build sheet again. Now, for your guys that want them on their streets, their street cars or their show cars, just to say they have an F4, I mean, the blower does make power and it is adequate. You just can't,
huge.
Mine's bigger than yours type thing. But, it's something that would work fine for those applications, but you just have to significantly underspin it to keep it alive. And then at that point, it doesn't compete in the Pro Mod world. So that's why you don't see them out there.
Yeah, you can make as much power or more on a smaller blower. Yeah, so I totally get that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of going off of that, it's interesting when you start looking, if you take like a nitrous combination and compare it to a forced induction combination, the cubic inch sizes are different, like strikingly different.
Yeah.
Is there a specific kind of like engine package you want to shoot for with these blowers that they really like that makes them happy?
We're still currently experimenting with that through several customers because, it's easy to fall in line like sheep and just copy everybody. But you really, from an innovation perspective, really don't get anywhere. The whole key is with a centrifugal blower, it's very important to have your motor as efficient as possible and the blower as efficient as possible. So where is that line? What blower RPM do you need to achieve to make that blower as happy as possible and to take the least amount of power to spin as possible, where you're maximizing ET? And then the motor has to be in its power band the whole time as well. So if either one of those fall off, your potential ET falls off drastically.
And so talking about efficiency, I'm going to propose a hypothetical. If you had a choice, if you had a choice between having a lighter car and a smaller blower versus a heavier car and a bigger blower, and the results were pretty much the same between the two, which one, which one do you tend to gravitate toward?
Well, it's kind of a tricky question because, for like a 140, for example, is the biggest blower that's currently ran in competition. The reason most pro mods go with that, it makes on the dyno, if you're doing a dyno shootout, the 136 almost makes the same power. It's very, very close. The only difference is the 140 makes more power sooner. So that gives you potential ET. As long as you can maximize that ET down low, that 140 has the ability to knock off a couple hundredths off of your potential ET. But it's not uncommon that, some of these, higher profile pro mods, when they put a 136 on their car, or even the Vortec blower, your mile an hour is within 2-3 mile an hour of the big blower all day long. And it's only because it's accelerating slightly slower than the 140. So it's, as far as which one would I prefer, I guess the answer to that is we prefer the 140 right now because it does accelerate faster.
One of the interesting things I think, when you take a look at the different power adders and their pros and their cons, and the one thing that, in some of our other shows we've heard different people talk about this with the Prochargers, specifically in Pro Mod coming on board. Do these blowers from a tuner standpoint give you something that's more manageable to apply power with? Is that like the big uptick on these, the big advantage?
Some of the advantages from what I've seen with like the 140 is since it first came out, they've made some mild modifications over time. It seems like it's a little more efficient than what it was. So the air inlet temperatures are down a little bit from when it was first introduced. And that's just kind of the nature of refining a already good product. So anytime that air inlet temperature comes down, that means that it's running more efficient and taking less power to spin. So that's very critical in the centrifugal world. Doesn't matter what blower company it is. I mean, those air inlet temperatures are your enemy, and that is an indication of how much power it takes to spin in a lot of cases. So like you can take a 121 and put it on a Hemi, a 136, put it on a Hemi, a 140, put it on a Hemi, and the temperatures may be difference of 150 degrees between those three blowers, and the boost numbers may be different by 150 degrees, and the boost may be 15 or so degrees different, or pounds different, but the horsepower may only be, between a 140 and a 121 may only be, a couple hundred, depending on the cubic inch size, of the engine. So, one thing with a centrifugal blower that we really haven't discussed that's very, very important is you can get way too much cubic inch for a blower, or you can get way too big of a blower for cubic inch. So, for example, like Andy Manson's, I run his, LDR car. I tune that car, and it's a very well-running car, but it's at the end of the day, it's a small block Ford. So right now, the biggest blower we put on it is a 121. And the reason that is because as you go into the bigger blowers that take more power to spin, that creates a very inefficient product on the front for that engine. Doesn't mean the blower is junk, it means it's not a good match for the motor. So then your drive power goes up, and then your boost goes up, so the wear and tear on the engine goes up, and you're really not seeking any benefits. So, I know I'm rambling about a bunch of stuff, but that's something that a lot of people need to know. You just don't want a 140 if you've got a small cubic inch big block, or, a big cubic inch small block. It may not necessarily be the best fit for what you're doing, because I can put a 130 on the car, and I can pick up 10 pounds of boost, but not pick up a single mile an hour, and that's because everything else is going up, drive power, temperatures, and all that, things of that nature.
It's interesting you bring that up. There's a lot of good information there, but the intake temperatures, I think, is something that a lot of people don't take into consideration, because there was a racer a few years ago, I'm not going to say his name, I don't want to divulge what he was doing with his program, but he literally had different size Prochargers that he was testing throughout the day to see exactly that. Where is, what does this package, what's it going to like, what can I do? And he was literally hot lapping this car, trying these different blowers, like, oh, that didn't work, oh, that didn't work. Here's the sweet spot. And that's what he went with. And it was like, what was interesting was he went with the smaller blower because it matched more of what everything else liked. And ultimately the performance showed it.
Yep, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's the correct way to do it. If you're running ultra competitive classes with any centrifugal blower, I mean, really refining your combination, your engine, and how it relates to the blower is what's critical. It's a little different with a turbo or a nitrous car or anything of that nature. You just bolt up nitrous and you get that horsepower and, you just hang on. A turbo, same thing. Turbo cares a lot more about load, a lot less about the engine. As long as you can spool the turbo, it's going to make the power of what the head unit's capable of making. Now, it may make it a little slower if your motor's a little weak or, can't get the exhaust wheel moving or, whatever, but there's ways to get around that. But, the blower, all of these things are fixed. It's bolted to the crankshaft, so you got what you got, and you have to kind of work your combination around it.
So I love all of the subjects that we've talked of. You weren't rambling at all, so don't feel bad because there's a lot of good information in there. I remember years ago I saw a guy with a small block Ford. It was like a Outlay 5 deal, like a 235 style car, and he had a 139 on a small block Ford side slinger, and I'm like, dude, what is happening? Like, that is not the right blower for that.
No,
it's not a combination.
That's correct.
So I love that you brought that up. Just in closing, we're running out of time. It flies. Every time we're on the show, time flies when we're talking to you guys. But one thing I want to ask is, where do you see superchargers, centrifugal superchargers specifically, kind of progressing and changing in the future? Or do you see any shortcomings where they need to progress?
I mean, I would say that there's an opportunity to work outside of the current platform that they're in, keep the centrifugal concept, but maybe, complete volute redesigns. I mean, there's, even though these are new blowers, a lot of these volutes have been around for several years, like the 140, for example. A lot of those components are, come from the industrial line, that's been around for a while. I know the companies are striving to do that. I've had relationships with Vortec and Procharger, and I know that they're always looking to do stuff like that, but it's very expensive to re-engineer stuff and then get stuff approved. So that's why everybody, I think, probably without speaking for them, they're working within their package now and they're competing very, very well. But I think, I know we have customers that are roots guys, that are screw guys. I mean, these guys are making modifications to these blowers, around the clock. There's, by the time you start in January and you end in December, you may have had 6 different versions of a blower on your car. So, if you want to keep competing in this world, you have to evolve as a company and continue to really look outside the box. Your old designs, no matter who you are only good for so long before they become outdated. So Procharger is doing an excellent job specifically of taking what was a very, very good design that's been around forever and basically squeezing every last drop of potential power out of it. But if we sat here and talk, 5, 6, 8 years from now, we're probably going to need to hit the reset button at some point and redo some stuff to compete because everybody else is going at it. You got turbos flowing 30% more air than they did last year. And you have companies that are really, really stepping up, and it's putting the pressure on everybody. And, and Procharger is really showing that they can get their hands dirty, in this world and compete. And I think if they continue to do that, drag racing will be fun because nobody wants to see the same power adders. You want multiple centrifugal blowers, you want multiple nitrous cars, screw blowers, roots blowers, everybody going at it, and everybody competing. That's the key. And right now, racing is as close as it's ever been, it seems.
I 100% agree. I think you're your thought process and what you think needs to change and what has changed is right on par. So unfortunately, Jason, we're out of time. We're gonna have to let you go, but definitely look at having you back on in the future. A lot of good information. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Jason. Well, that was a treat having Jason Lee on the show. A lot of good insight, a lot of different avenues to explore for sure. I think we run into this every time, Wagner, where we have somebody on, we're talking to them, we're getting tons of really good information and getting questions answered, and then time runs out. Every time.
Well, here's the thing with Jason is not only he is an accomplished tuner, he's one hell of a driver too. And we could have dove into a whole different set of questions with him about what it's like to drive one of these cars, because he's driven about everything. Yeah. So it would be very, again, interesting to get his take on that. So, yeah, I mean, there was a lot to take away from that. And definitely when it comes to the efficiency and the sizing of the blower and the engine, that's, what I think is a big key that people need to pay attention to there.
Absolutely, and I was holding back. I'm like, man, I just want to talk to him about racing and his company. But definitely, viewers, listeners, everybody out there, check out PTP Racing on social media. You can follow those guys; they're always posting stuff. He is constantly at the track, working on a slew of different cars in different classes. Really, really bright guy, and he knows obviously way more than most people out there. So it was, like I said, it was a real treat having him on the show. And it looks like our next guest is going to be Eric Dillard from Proline. It looks like he's on the line. Eric, what is going on, man?
What's up, guys? Not much, man. We're just trying to make it happen the best we can here.
Right. Always, man. It's yep. Really good to have you. Really good to have you on the show. We appreciate you taking the time for sure. So obviously today we're talking about centrifugal superchargers and a lot of different nuances of them in drag racing. And I'm just going to start off and talk with you about the technology and how it's progressed over the last few years, and whether it's the superchargers or if it's just everything in the entire sport of drag racing. Because if you remember, and I'm sure you do, a few years ago, it was tough, really, really tough to have a centrifugal supercharged combination like in RVW or Pro Mod or whatever that would go more than 200 miles per hour in the eighth. And now that's like standard, like 205 seems to be standard. And what have you seen that's changed to make that happen?
I think overall, I think the technology, I really think everything around the blower. I think the blower itself, from a durability standpoint, changed a lot, which is what kept a lot of people away from the drive units, from the blower itself at this level. Just the weight of the mass of what moves in that blower and how we pedal these cars and are in and out of the throttle. There was a lot of, before everything went spline drive and before there was some updates on the gearboxes and stuff, that's really what was holding the blowers back to some degree, but the power level was already there. So the blowers were already built pretty much the same, I'd say 5-6 years ago, that made the same power. It was more of just making them robust enough to be able to go out and handle what we put them through. But I think it all came kind of full circle. I think the technology with all this new ECUs and how much you're able to control the cars and the chassis development and this side of stuff just came so far along. So I think really a lot of things kind of all caught up at the same time.
We had Jason Lee on earlier. We're talking about centrifugal blowers, and we were talking about just general engine application, how it works with it. Proline, that's what you guys do, and you do it very well. What's it been like for you guys to kind of really dive into the centrifugal blower market? Because these things are literally, they're a whole different animal.
Yeah, it's actually been a great experience for us. We were so die-hard turbo guys for so long, and it's still in our blood. It's just we've learned with the Procharger, it's something that we can definitely duplicate more. It's a little more manageable for the tuner, the crew, the driver. A turbo deal is tough to race. There's no other way around it. So, we feel like we worked hard at it and had a really good package, and we built a competitive combo around the turbo deal. But I would say, like right now, we can only do about, we could do 3 blower cars to 1 turbo car as far as Proline support. So it's helped grow our business. It's helped us be able to go out and provide, the same service we provided before, but we've been able to multiply it a little bit, which has been huge for us. So the motor platform's very durable. The blowers are limited to RPM based on the window of, the RPM you can run the blower as hard as you want, but you're going to limit what you can do on the bottom. So to get these things to leave the start line, we can only run the motors up around 9 to 9,200. And because of that, it really makes you take a Hemi and turn it 91, 9200 RPM, and they just live forever. So the attrition rate's gone way down. People are having fun, and I think at this level, I always get back to the cost. It's expensive for anybody to do what we're doing at the level it's at, but even for the guys that are doing it, to save 20-25% on being able to get that little extra run count out of parts and get that attrition rate down, it's been huge. It's been there's a lot less fire drills these days than there were before.
I can imagine.
So I want to keep diving down this road a little bit. You mentioned turbo and like you have a lot of roots in that, and then the blower stuff has come around. I want you to maybe possibly rate in like 1, 2, 3 when it comes to like a blower versus a turbo versus a nitrous combination, and why you put them in that order.
I'd say if you're going for the pure hobby aspect, and if we weren't out there going after a championship, and we were going out there and we were running these like shootout events, and for big money and pure excitement, you don't get to get in the car that much. It's hard to beat the thrill of a turbo car. So it's interesting to say that, like, for a shootout style race and for the challenge that a turbo car gives you, because a lot of us racers do this because we're fighting the machine. The challenge is what a lot of this is. So a turbo car could still rate number one to a lot of people, and even to me. But if it was in that aspect of the way you're going to look at it, it would be turbo for us, Procharger, because that's what we're learning and adapting to, and we're really getting excited about that. And then a nitrous deal, because we've just never had that much experience with one. But if you came to me and said, "Hey, Eric, we want to put you in a car this year and we want to go after a championship," I'd probably be picking a Procharger car, because if I need consistency and I need points and I need to make it all the way to the end and I need durability, it's going to be hard not to step into a Procharger package. And if I had the right support, I could still argue a turbo deal, but I would say 7, 8 out of 10, I would pick a Procharger setup to take that path. So I think it's all in the mindset of how you're getting out there and what you're wanting to do. But and it takes there's the different personality from a different client might change that. But yeah, from the competition side and longevity, Procharger. But from the pure just thrill of the ride, turbo all the way.
What are some of the capabilities that you guys have at Proline when it comes to these, just these Procharger packages, Vortec packages, just centrifugals, superchargers in general?
I think what a lot of people might not know that until they actually come and do business with us is we're an engine shop, but we're really like a full support shop. So when you call us and are interested and you want to buy an engine, we're going to help you from bumper to bumper, from the splitter on the front to the wheelie bar wheel on the back and everything in between. And we're kind of a family here. So when somebody finally comes and does decide to make that leap and do something with Proline, we're more of a, it turns into like a relationship, man. We turn into, we're not really one just to sell a motor and talk to you later. You got my cell phone number, and everybody here is usually, available any time of the day on the weekends. And we just like to really take care of our clients and give them an experience inside of drag racing that maybe they've never seen before. And it's kind of like we want it to be your golf game. We want you to have fun. And I think we work hard to perform, but we also work hard to provide like a service that we feel could be unmatched in the industry. And a lot of people don't really get to know that until they're really here, because we don't have it's hard to advertise that, right? Until somebody's here and they get that experience, and then it all works off word of mouth. But I'd say our biggest thing is just, man, we really run the business with our heart and try to make sure everybody that comes to Proline is really happy and will be happy, and we keep you doing business with you for 10 years. That's always our goal.
If you're looking at it from a racer standpoint and you're going into one of these all-out, heads up applications, what do they need to do to get the most out of that blower? What's the kind of the secret to unlocking the most potential possible?
It's really everything around it. It depends on the class. We build a lot of different engines for a lot of different classes. If we're going eighth quarter, cubic inch plays a big part in a Procharger deal. They don't have that low end boost like a Roots or a Screw does. So when it leaves the starting line, it leaves on 13 pounds of boost, 15 pounds of boost, where an average Roots might leave with 25 to 30 and an average Screw leaves with 45, So with a Screw, you're trying to stop the motor, literally like zero timing to get it to leave the start line, it still wants to, rip the tire off. Where with ours, you're walking a line with a Procharger on that initial release of the trans brake on it, and the motor actually wanting to accelerate, especially in bad air. So there's a lot that goes into the gearing and the motor size, and a lot of people don't, a lot of people saw us come out with a Procharger and run pretty good up front, but we had a really good handle on what we felt it needed, and we were already geared towards that style of engine build, and it all kind of fell together. So it's something that'll, I would say a lot of people tried the Procharger deal, even when the durability was there, but we were able to just package it in a way that, from a lot of stuff we've learned from a turbo deal, because what's the same thing with a turbo deal? Low end torque, you don't have that power right off the button. That's something that we already had a lot of experience in, so we were able to kind of jump on top of that pretty quick. So as far as the motor platform, I'd say it's the motor and the gearing and a lot of things around that blower is what really makes the deal so successful right now.
I want to dive a little more into a lot of the fundamental tuning differences that you guys approach differently when it comes to a centrifugal supercharger versus all the other power adders, right? Because obviously you guys have a lot of experience with turbos, and you've touched on a little bit. I just want to dive in more and get some really like that in-depth stuff that most people don't know about. Like, hey, obviously, blowers do this and turbos do this, but what are some of the deeper differences between like a turbo versus a centrifugal supercharger when it comes to tuning and power management?
It depends on the series. Like in HRA, we can't run traction control, so there's a lot different tuning approach to where everywhere else we go, we're allowed to use a lot of the features that Fuel Tech offers, which are incredible to be able to control these engines from different aspects. We actually, when we're allowed to run the controls, like in the outlaw classes, we really tune them very, very similar. So we've always been one of the components that when we run like a turbo car, we let it kind of make what it needs to make. The power's always there, and then we control the engine with plots and let it pull the timing as it needs. I know we discussed this. I think Jamie discussed this some on his Fuel Tech piece he did with you guys, and it's like that control. We like to control engine speed. So engine speed to us is a little bit more consistent than trying to keep the boost consistent. So we like to have a standard boost curve and then control the motor. That's something we brought into Fuel Tech, and I think it's kind of been adapted and helped the sport overall. It's really helped control these cars a lot. But we kind of do the same thing with the Procharger. We like it that way. And we like to control the engine speed. The trick with the Procharger is you don't have that option just to make a little bit more boost when you want to, and then be able to control the engine speed. If the air's bad and the conditions change, it might not make it to your plot. And if it doesn't, and then it goes out and tries to power back to it, it's going to take the tire off. So, your tuner's got to be so adapted with the air to make sure that the way he wants to run that plot, that the motor can actually get to that. Because with a Procharger, that can change just with a few hundred feet. So I'd say it's a lot more of a challenge with a Procharger car to make sure you're building plots that the motor actually has enough power to get to. Where the turbo car, man, you can just shove a little bit more boost in and it's going to get there. It's just, is it enough for the track? Can the track take what you're doing? So the styles are very similar but very different in the same sense.
Well, that was an amazing amount of information, and thank you so much, Eric. But we're going to have to wrap things up here. We're out of time. Where can people learn more about what you guys have going on with Proline?
You go to our website, prolineracing.net, and go to Instagram and Facebook, and in the end, just always give us a call. I'm always here almost every day, and we got a big team of 8 or 10 people here that are up front in sales, and anytime you need anything, just don't hesitate to give us a call and check in.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Eric. We appreciate it very much, and we'll get you back on the show in future where we can talk about some more engine stuff and anything else you guys have expertise in.
Awesome. We appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Eric. So it's always a real treat when we get to talk to guys like Jason and Eric. I've talked to them in the past personally, and having them on the show was really cool. I think my favorite takeaway, a couple of them. Number one, talking about how everything, it comes up in almost every single tech inspection. I think it comes up in every tech inspection, actually, how it's not just one thing that's like technology is advancing. It's literally everything. It's engine, it's transmission, it's turbos and superchargers and chassis development, and all of that is all expanding, fuel injection. And they both brought it up, how everything's expanding. It's like, the superchargers is getting better, but like everything's getting better. And that's why everything is, getting faster. But Wagner, what did you think?
think them talking about again, with everything advancing around the blower, but specifically the drive units, because pedaling a forced induction vehicle, let alone a blower that's attached directly to the crank, there's a lot of harmonics there. And by the improvements they have in these drive units, I think is what's made that was that bridge that made it possible to bring these cars to the level that they're at now. Because otherwise, I mean, I remember seeing these things eat themselves constantly, and you don't see that like you used to anymore.
No, you absolutely don't. And one other thing I really liked, I want to close on, is how Eric talked about how they control RPM. They just let boost kind of do its thing when it comes to centrifugal supercharger. And it blew my mind. It was like, a couple hundred feet can like make or break. It can strike the tire, or it can, knock it into the dirt. And it's like, man, that's crazy to me. Like, that's something really cool that I'm glad he brought up for sure. But that does it for this episode of Tech Inspection. We are 100% out of time. Make sure to stay tuned for new episodes of Tech Inspection, along with all of our other new shows right here on Speed Video.